My husband assaulted me in front of his entire family and no one stood up to him, but my daughter did something that made him turn pale. It happened during his nephew's birthday party. 40 relatives packed into his brother's backyard, kids running around with cake sticky fingers while adults nursed beers and pretended not to notice the tension crackling between us. I'd made the mistake of talking to his cousin Damien about my new job at the veterinary clinic. Just casual conversation about helping injured animals. But when Caleb overheard, his jaw tightened. He hated when I had interests outside our marriage, especially ones that made me happy. "Time to go," he announced, grabbing my upper arm hard enough to leave marks. "But the party just started," I protested quietly. "Rosalind hasn't even opened presents yet." His grip tightened. I said we're leaving. When I didn't move fast enough, he backhanded me across the face. The crack echoed across the yard like a gunshot. Conversation stopped. Children froze mid-giggle. Someone dropped a beer bottle, but nobody intervened. His mother looked away. His father suddenly found the barbecue fascinating. Even Damien, who'd been laughing with me minutes before, studied his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. That's when my 6-year-old daughter Paisley walked over from the bounce house, pigtails askew and face smeared with frosting. "Daddy," she said in her clear little voice. "Why did you hit Mommy?" Caleb's face flushed red. "Go play, Paisley. This is grown-up business." "But hitting is wrong," she continued, tilting her head. "You always tell me hitting is wrong." "That's different," he snapped, still gripping my arm. "Sometimes adults—" "Mrs. Henderson at school says there's never a good reason to hit someone you love," Paisley interrupted. Her teacher had recently done a unit on healthy relationships after another parent raised concerns. Caleb's eyes darted around the silent yard. Everyone was watching now, their carefully maintained ignorance cracking under a child's innocent observation. "Paisley, stop talking," he ordered. "She also says if someone hits you, you should tell a trusted adult." Paisley pulled out a small digital camera we'd given her for her birthday. "So, I've been taking pictures." My heart stopped. "What pictures?" Caleb's voice came out strangled. "Of Mommy's bruises. And videos of you yelling." Mrs. Henderson said documentation is important. She scrolled through the camera with the efficiency of a child raised on technology. "I sent them to Grandma Betty yesterday." Caleb released my arm like it was on fire. Grandma Betty was my mother, a retired police sergeant who'd never liked him. "You little—" he started toward Paisley. "I wouldn't," said a new voice from the gate. We all turned to see my mother walking into the backyard, her badge visible on her hip despite being in civilian clothes. Behind her were 2 uniformed officers. "Hello, Caleb," Mom said calmly. "We need to talk." Paisley ran to her grandmother, camera still in hand. "I did what you taught me, Grandma. I collected evidence." Caleb looked around the yard desperately, but his family had melted away like ice in summer heat. Even his own mother had disappeared into the house. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered. "Is it?" Mom asked, scrolling through Paisley's camera. Her face grew darker with each image. "Because what I'm seeing here looks like a pattern of domestic violence documented by a very smart little girl." One of the officers stepped forward with handcuffs. But Caleb's eyes were fixed on something else entirely. Paisley was holding up her camera again, this time recording him in real time. "Smile, Daddy," she said sweetly. "This one's going to Grandma's lawyer friend." The color drained from Caleb's face as the full weight of his situation hit him. Everything he'd done, every bruise he'd left, every scream he'd muffled, every threat he'd whispered, was captured in digital form by his own daughter. "Officer Martinez," Mom said to the younger of the 2 cops, "would you mind reading Mr. Thompson his rights?" "Wait," Caleb said, backing away. "You can't do this. I'm her husband. This is between us." "Actually," Officer Martinez replied, pulling out his handcuffs, "assault is assault. Doesn't matter if you're married to your victim." I watched in stunned silence as they cuffed him. Part of me had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, but I'd never imagined my 6-year-old daughter would be the one to orchestrate it. "Mommy," Paisley said, tugging on my dress. "Are you okay?" I knelt down and pulled her into my arms, my cheek still stinging from Caleb's blow. "I'm more than okay, baby. I'm proud of you." Mrs. Henderson taught us about stranger danger, but she also taught us about family danger. She said sometimes the people who hurt us are people we love. My heart broke a little more. No child should have to learn those words. As they loaded Caleb into the patrol car, his brother Connor finally emerged from the house. "This is ridiculous," he said to my mother. "Family disputes should stay in the family." Mom turned to face him, her cop stare in full effect. "Funny how none of you considered Paisley family when you watched him hit her mother." Connor's wife Brittany appeared behind him, wringing her hands. "We didn't want to interfere. Marriage is sacred. So is a child's safety," Mom replied. But apparently that wasn't sacred enough for any of you to speak up. I looked around the yard at Caleb's relatives, finally seeing them clearly. These people had watched me get hit and done nothing. They'd normalized abuse for so long that they genuinely believed it was none of their business. Caleb's mother, Dolores, finally came outside as the patrol car pulled away. "This is all your fault," she hissed at me. "You made him angry. You always push his buttons." Before I could respond, Paisley stepped in front of me like a tiny bodyguard. "Grandma Dolores," she said solemnly. "That's called victim blaming. Mrs. Henderson taught us about that too." Dolores's mouth fell open. She'd just been schooled by a first grader. "Come on," Mom said, putting her arm around me. "Let's get you both out of here." As we walked toward her car, I heard Connor telling his guests that the party was over. Kids were crying because they hadn't finished the cake. Adults were muttering about police overreach and family business. But all I could think about was the weight of Paisley's small hand in mine, and how she'd been braver than every adult in that yard combined. The drive to Mom's house passed in silence. Paisley dozed in her car seat, exhausted from playing detective and superhero in the same afternoon. I stared out the window, my face throbbing, trying to process what had just happened. How long? Mom asked quietly. What? How long has this been going on? I closed my eyes. Since Paisley was 3. Mom's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. 3 years. And that little girl has been watching it happen. I tried to hide it from her. I thought I was protecting her. Honey, Mom said gently, kids see everything. They just don't always know what to do with what they see. We pulled into her driveway, and I carried sleeping Paisley inside. Mom had kept my old room exactly the same, as if she'd always known we might need to come home someday. After I tucked Paisley into the twin bed that used to be mine, Mom and I sat at her kitchen table with cups of coffee neither of us wanted to drink. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I told her about the first time he'd grabbed me too hard, how he'd apologized with flowers and promises. I told her about the escalation, the shoving, the slapping, the threats. I told her about walking on eggshells, monitoring every word, every expression, every breath. He controlled everything, I said. What I wore, who I talked to, where I went. He even monitored my phone. Is that why you never called? I nodded, shame burning my throat. He said if I ever involved you, he'd take Paisley and disappear. He said no court would give custody to a woman who couldn't even protect herself. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Courts tend to frown on abusers who assault people in front of 40 witnesses. I can't believe she's been collecting evidence this whole time. She gets that from you, Mom said with a small smile. Remember when you were 7 and documented all the ways your brother was breaking curfew? You had dates, times, and photographic evidence. I laughed, despite everything. Uncle Ray thought I was going to grow up to be a cop like you. Maybe she will. Though after today, I'm thinking prosecutor might be more her speed. The next morning, I woke to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Paisley chattering with her grandmother. For the first time in years, I'd slept through the night without jolting awake at every sound. Mommy! Paisley bounced into the room. Grandma made Mickey Mouse pancakes, and they actually look like Mickey Mouse. I followed her to the kitchen, where Mom was flipping perfectly round pancakes with smaller circles attached for ears. Retired life agrees with you, I said, accepting the cup of coffee she handed me. Having my girls back agrees with me more. Paisley climbed onto my lap, syrup already smeared across her cheek. Mommy, are we going to live here now? For a while, baby. Is that okay? She nodded enthusiastically. Grandma has cable TV and a cookie jar that's always full. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My stomach clenched, thinking it might be Caleb calling from jail. Instead, it was Mrs. Henderson, Paisley's teacher. I heard about yesterday. Paisley is incredibly brave. If you need anything, references for lawyers, counseling resources, whatever, please let me know. You're not alone in this. I showed the text to Mom, who smiled. Good teacher. The best. She's the one who taught Paisley about documentation and trusted adults. Remind me to send her flowers. The phone rang, and Mom answered with her official cop voice. Detective Patterson. She listened for a few minutes, making notes on a pad. Yes, she's here. Yes, she'll be available. Thursday works. After she hung up, she turned to me. That was the district attorney's office. They want to interview you Thursday about filing charges. My stomach twisted. What if they don't believe me? Honey, they have photographic evidence, video recordings, and 40 witnesses who watched him hit you. He's going to prison. But what if? No what ifs, Mom said firmly. You're safe now. Paisley's safe. And tomorrow we're going to start figuring out the rest. The rest turned out to be more complicated than I'd expected. First, there was the matter of our house. Caleb had inherited it from his grandfather, which meant I had no legal claim to it. All my belongings were there, along with Paisley's toys, clothes, and books. We'll get an escort to collect your things, Mom said. Officer Martinez offered to facilitate it. I don't want to go back there. You don't have to. I'll go with Officer Martinez and pack everything up. But Paisley had other ideas. I want to get my stuffies myself. They get scared when strangers touch them. So Tuesday morning, we found ourselves standing in front of the house I'd called home for 4 years. It looked smaller somehow, less intimidating in the daylight. Officer Martinez met us at the door. He was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. We'll move quickly, he said. Get what you need and get out. Walking into that house felt like entering a crime scene. Everything looked normal. The throw pillows I'd arranged just so, the photos on the mantle, the coffee mug Caleb had left in the sink. But the normalcy felt sinister now, like a stage set for a play about happiness. Paisley ran straight to her room, hugging each stuffed animal like she was rescuing prisoners of war. I moved through our bedroom mechanically, throwing clothes into garbage bags. I didn't want to take time to fold anything. I just wanted out. In the closet, I found the jewelry box Caleb had given me for our first anniversary. Inside was the promise ring he'd bought me before we got married, when he was still pretending to be someone worth loving. I left it there, but I did take the small wooden box hidden behind my winter coats. Inside were photos from before I met Caleb, me with college friends, family pictures, evidence of the person I used to be. Mommy, look what I found, Paisley said, appearing in the doorway with something in her hands. It was her digital camera, but it wasn't the same one she'd had at the party. Where did you get this? It was hidden in my dollhouse. Daddy took my other one after Grandma came, but I had this backup. I stared at my daughter, this tiny criminal mastermind who'd been running a one-child surveillance operation without anyone noticing. Paisley, how many cameras do you have? She counted on her fingers. This one, the one Grandma has, and the really tiny one I hid in the kitchen. Officer Martinez whistled. Kid, you could teach courses at the police academy. Mrs. Henderson says preparation prevents poor performance. As we loaded the last of our belongings into Mom's car, I looked back at the house one final time. I'd been a prisoner there, but I'd also been Paisley's mother there. She'd taken her first steps on that hardwood floor. I'd rocked her to sleep in the nursery upstairs. But those good memories were poisoned now. tainted by the fear that had lived in every room. Ready? Mom asked. I nodded. Let's go home. The legal process moved faster than I'd expected. Caleb was charged with assault and battery, domestic violence, and intimidation of a witness. Apparently threatening to take Paisley had been recorded on one of her devices. His family hired an expensive lawyer who tried to paint me as an unstable wife who turned our daughter against her father. But the evidence was overwhelming. Between Paisley's documentation and the testimonies of the party guests, the case was airtight. Caleb took a plea deal to avoid a trial. 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, mandatory anger management, and a restraining order that would last until Paisley turned 18. It's not enough, Mom said after the sentencing hearing. It's enough for now, I replied. And it's more than I thought possible 6 months ago. Caleb's family blamed me entirely. His mother called my mom's house repeatedly until Mom changed the number. His brother Connor showed up at the veterinary clinic where I worked, demanding I drop the charges. Your sister-in-law made her choice when she decided to side with a man who hits women, my boss, Dr. Rodriguez, told him. She's not available to discuss family matters during work hours. Connor left, but not before calling me a vindictive bitch, loud enough for the entire waiting room to hear. Small men make big noise, Dr. Rodriguez said afterward. Don't let them live in your head rent-free. The hardest part was explaining everything to Paisley in age-appropriate terms. How do you tell a 6-year-old that her father is in prison because he hurt people? How do you preserve her ability to love him while protecting her from his influence? I found a therapist who specialized in children from violent homes. Dr. Winters was a grandmother herself, with gray hair and infinite patience. Paisley is remarkably resilient, she told me after their 3rd session, but she's also carrying a lot of responsibility for an adult situation. We need to help her understand that keeping you safe wasn't her job, but she saved us. And that's a heavy burden for a child. She needs to know that you're the adult now, that you're handling the grown-up problems. It took months of therapy for me to understand what Dr. Winters meant. Paisley had been functioning as my protector, documenting abuse and planning our escape. That's not a role any child should have to play. Meanwhile, I was learning to be an adult again. For 3 years, I'd been a reactive creature, constantly calculating Caleb's moods and adjusting my behavior accordingly. Making decisions based on my own wants and needs felt foreign. Simple things overwhelmed me. What did I want for dinner? What TV show did I like? What made me happy? It takes time, Dr. Winters told me during one of my own therapy sessions. You've been living in survival mode. Now you get to remember who you are. 6 months after the sentencing, I received a letter from Caleb in prison. My first instinct was to throw it away, but Mom convinced me to read it. It was 3 pages of apologies and explanations. He'd been under stress at work. His father had been critical of his marriage. He'd learned about anger management in prison. He wanted to be better for Paisley and me. None of it felt real. It read like a script he'd been given, full of psychological buzzwords and vague promises. At the bottom, in his familiar handwriting, was the real message. I know you'll take me back eventually. You always do. That night, I burned the letter in Mom's fireplace while Paisley watched. Are you mad at Daddy? She asked. I'm sad for Daddy, I said carefully. And I'm proud of us for being brave. Mrs. Henderson says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you're scared. Mrs. Henderson is very wise. She asked if you would come talk to our class about safety. She said you could tell them how grown-ups can help kids who are scared. The idea terrified me. Speaking to a room full of 6-year-olds about domestic violence seemed impossible. But it also felt important. What do you think I should tell them? Paisley considered this seriously. Tell them that if someone in their family is hurting someone else, it's okay to tell a teacher. And tell them that love isn't supposed to hurt. Out of the mouths of babes. A year later, I stood in front of Mrs. Henderson's 1st grade class, looking at 22 little faces. Some were attentive, some were picking their noses, and some were clearly wondering why their friend's mom was talking about serious stuff instead of reading them a story. Who can tell me what it means to feel safe? I asked. Hands shot up around the room. When nobody yells at you, when your mom tucks you in, when the monsters aren't real. I smiled. Those are all great answers. Feeling safe means knowing that the people who love you will protect you, not hurt you. A little boy in the back raised his hand. What if someone you love does hurt you? The room went quiet. Mrs. Henderson gave me an encouraging nod. That's a very good question, I said. Sometimes people we love make bad choices. They might yell or hit or say mean things, but that doesn't mean you deserved it. And it doesn't mean you can't ask for help. Like Paisley did? A girl named Madison asked. Exactly like Paisley did. She saw something wrong and told trusted adults. That was very brave. Are you and Paisley's daddy friends now? Madison continued. I glanced at Paisley, who was sitting crisscross on the carpet with her classmates. She nodded at me, giving permission to tell the truth. No, we're not friends anymore. Sometimes when people make really bad choices, the consequences last a long time. But Paisley and I are safe now, and that's what matters most. After class, Mrs. Henderson walked me to the parking lot. Thank you for doing that. You'd be surprised how many kids live with violence at home. How do you handle it? Knowing these kids might be going home to dangerous situations? I do what Paisley did. I document, I report, and I trust the system to work. It doesn't always work fast enough, but it's better than doing nothing. She learned that from you. She learned it from you too. Children model what they see. She saw her mother's strength, even when you didn't feel strong. That evening, Paisley and I were making dinner together in Mom's kitchen when she asked the question I'd been dreading. Mommy, do you think Daddy will ever come home? I put down the wooden spoon I'd been using to stir sauce and knelt to her level. What do you mean by home, baby? Like, will he ever live with us again? I took a deep breath. No, sweetheart. Daddy won't be living with us anymore. Even after prison? Even after prison. We have a new home now, with Grandma, and we're safe here. She nodded thoughtfully. I miss him sometimes, but I don't miss being scared. It's okay to miss him. It's okay to love someone and also know that they can't be in your life, like when someone dies. Sort of. Sometimes people are still alive, but they can't be part of our family anymore because they made choices that hurt us. That night, as I tucked her into bed, Paisley asked one more question. Mommy, are you proud of me? I'm prouder of you than I've ever been of anything. Even though I got Daddy in trouble? You didn't get Daddy in trouble, baby. Daddy got himself in trouble by making bad choices. You protected us by being smart and brave. She smiled sleepily. Mrs. Henderson says I might be a police officer like Grandma when I grow up. What do you think about that? I think it would be good. Then I could help other kids who are scared. 2 years later, we moved into our own apartment across town. It was small but sunny, with a garden where Paisley could plant flowers and a school district known for its anti-bullying programs. Caleb sent letters occasionally, but I stopped reading them. The return address was enough to tell me he was still in prison, still trying to manipulate his way back into our lives. When Paisley asked about the letters, I told her the truth. Daddy is trying to talk to us, but we don't have to listen. We get to choose who has access to our lives now. Can I read them when I'm older? If you want to, they'll always be yours to read or not read. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Dr. Rodriguez offered me a promotion to clinic manager, which came with better insurance and enough money for us to live independently. The work was rewarding. Helping animals heal felt like metaphor for my own recovery. You've changed, Dr. Sao. Rodriguez told me one day as we locked up after a particularly busy day treating a litter of puppies whose owner had brought them in for their first shots. How so? When you started here, you jumped every time the door chimed. Now you laugh when the cats knock over the water bowls. She was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped living in a constant state of hypervigilance. I could enjoy small moments without scanning for threats. That doesn't mean it was easy. Loud noises still made me flinch. Unexpected touch still made me freeze. Dating seemed impossible. How do you explain to someone that your last relationship ended with your daughter collecting evidence for the prosecution? But I was learning to live with my scars, instead of hiding from them. On Paisley's 9th birthday, we threw a party in our small apartment. Mom came, along with Mrs. Henderson and some of Paisley's school friends. It was loud and chaotic, with cake smeared on furniture and balloons popped by overexcited children. Best party ever, Paisley declared, as I was cleaning up afterward. Even better than the ones at the big house? She considered this seriously. Those parties weren't really fun. Everyone was always watching to make sure nobody made Daddy mad. I'd forgotten about that. How even birthday parties had been exercises in tension management. How we'd all walked on eggshells, afraid to be too loud or too messy or too anything. These parties are better, she decided, because we can be ourselves. That night, after the last guest had left and Paisley was asleep surrounded by her new art supplies, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and finally allowed myself to feel proud. I'd gotten out. I'd kept my daughter safe. I'd rebuilt our lives from nothing. 3 years ago, I'd been a victim. Tonight, I was a survivor. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a split second, the old fear returned. Was Caleb out early? Had he found our new address? But it was Mrs. Henderson texting from a new phone. Saw the photos from Paisley's party on the class group chat. You both look happy. Proud of you both. I smiled and texted back. Thank you for teaching her that love shouldn't hurt. Thank you for showing her what strength looks like. The next morning was Saturday, which meant pancakes and cartoons. Paisley padded into the kitchen in her pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction. Mommy, I had a dream about the camera. Which camera? My first one. The one that started everything. I flipped a pancake, waiting for her to continue. In the dream, I gave it to another little girl who needed help, and she knew exactly what to do with it. That sounds like a good dream. It was, because maybe my camera can help other families too. Later that day, we drove to the women's shelter where Mom volunteered once a month. In the car, we had a bag full of digital cameras, cheap ones I'd bought online after Paisley suggested we give them to kids who might need them. Are you sure about this? I asked as we pulled into the parking lot. Mrs. Henderson says when you have a superpower, you have to use it to help other people. What's your superpower? Documentation, she said solemnly, and being brave when grown-ups forget how. Inside the shelter, we met children of all ages who were living with their mothers in the temporary housing. Some were shy, some were defiant, and some were old beyond their years. Paisley taught them how to use the cameras, explaining about taking pictures of injuries and recording conversations. She showed them how to hide the cameras in toys and how to upload files to cloud storage. The most important thing, she told a group of kids ranging from 5 to 12, is finding a trusted adult. Teachers are good. So are nurses and police officers and grandmas. One little boy, maybe 7 years old, raised his hand. What if the trusted adult doesn't believe you? Then you find another one, Paisley said matter-of-factly. Keep trying until someone listens. An older girl, probably 11, asked, what if you're scared to tell? Paisley considered this question seriously. Being scared is normal, but being safe is more important than being scared. On the drive home, I watched my daughter in the rearview mirror. She was humming and drawing in her sketchbook, completely unaware that she'd just potentially saved multiple lives. Hey Paisley? Yeah? I love you. I love you too, Mommy. And I'm proud of us. Proud of us for what? For turning our bad story into a good ending. 4 years later, Paisley was 13 and starting 8th grade. She'd grown into a confident teenager who still preferred combat boots to cute shoes and carried her camera everywhere. She'd won the school's journalism award 3 years running for her documentary projects. Her most recent film, about domestic violence awareness, had been selected for the State Middle School Film Festival. I want to study criminal justice in college, she told me one evening as we were doing homework together at the kitchen table. Maybe go to law school after that. That's a big goal. You sure you want to spend that much time in school? Someone has to prosecute the bad guys. Might as well be me. Her confidence still amazed me. This kid who'd grown up witnessing violence had somehow emerged determined to fight injustice rather than hide from it. "Can I ask you something?" I said, closing my laptop. "Sure. Do you ever regret what you did? Getting your father arrested?" She looked up from her algebra homework, pencil still in hand. "Do you ever regret leaving him?" "Never." "Then there's your answer." That weekend, we drove to the state capitol for Paisley's film festival. Her documentary, titled Love Shouldn't Hurt, featured interviews with domestic violence survivors, expert commentary from lawyers and social workers, and her own narration about recognizing warning signs. At 13, she was the youngest filmmaker in the competition. "Nervous?" I asked as we took our seats in the auditorium. "Excited," she corrected. "This is important work." When her film played, the audience was completely silent. You could hear people crying during the interview segments. Several adults pulled out their phones to take notes during the resource list at the end. Paisley won first place. During her acceptance speech, she looked directly into the camera and said, "If you're watching this and someone in your family is hurting you or someone you love, please tell a trusted adult. Document everything. And remember that you deserve to feel safe." Afterward, a woman approached us in the lobby. She was middle-aged with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "I'm Attorney General Morrison," she said. "I'd like to talk to your daughter about maybe interning with our victim advocacy program when she's older." "She's only 13, I pointed out. "I know. I'm thinking ahead. We need more people like her in the legal system." That night, in our hotel room, Paisley and I ordered room service and watched terrible movies on cable TV. During a commercial break, she looked at me seriously. "Mommy, are you dating anyone?" The question caught me off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Because you deserve to be happy. And I'm old enough now to know that not all men are like Daddy." She was right. Over the past few years, I'd met several decent men through work and Mom's church, but I'd always found excuses not to pursue anything serious. "I might be ready to try dating again," I admitted. "Good, but if anyone ever makes you feel scared or small, we're leaving immediately. Deal." And they have to pass the Paisley test, which is, they have to respect you even when they think I'm not watching. Smart kid. 6 months later, I went on my first real date in 7 years. His name was Vincent, and he was a veterinarian who'd recently joined our practice. He was gentle with animals, patient with difficult pet owners, and had never once raised his voice in the 3 months I'd known him. Our first date was coffee, because coffee is safe. If someone shows their true colors, you can leave after 1 cup. Vincent didn't show any red flags. He asked about my interests, listened when I talked, and didn't try to touch me without permission. He didn't ask about Paisley's father or why I was a single mom. He just accepted that we came as a package deal. Our second date was dinner at a family restaurant Paisley had chosen. She grilled him like a seasoned prosecutor. "What's your stance on hitting?" she asked before he'd even ordered. "Paisley," I warned. "It's okay," Vincent said. "That's an important question. My stance is that hitting is never acceptable. Violence is never the answer to any problem. What if someone was trying to hurt someone you love? Then I'd call the police and let trained professionals handle it. What if the police couldn't get there in time?" Vincent thought about this seriously. "Then I'd do whatever was necessary to protect them without becoming violent myself. But I'd exhaust every other option first." Paisley nodded approvingly. "You passed the first round. There are more rounds?" Vincent asked, amused. "Oh yes, this could take months." It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of careful observation, background research that would have impressed the FBI, and subtle testing of his patience and character. Finally, Paisley gave her approval. "He's good," she announced one evening after Vincent had taken us both to mini golf. "He's not perfect, but he's good, and he makes you smile." "That's it? I passed? Congratulations," Paisley said solemnly. "You're now authorized to date my mother." 2 years later, Vincent proposed. He asked Paisley's permission first, which earned him major points in her book. "Are you going to change your name?" she asked me after I said yes. "I don't think so. I like being Paisley's mom with the same last name." "Good. We've been through too much to change our names now." The wedding was small. Just Mom, Vincent's parents, Paisley, and a few close friends. Dr. Rodriguez officiated, since she'd gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. In her maid of honor speech, Paisley said, "My mom taught me that love should make you feel safe, not scared. Vincent makes her feel safe. That's all that matters." After the ceremony, as we were taking pictures, Mom pulled me aside. "Your father would be proud," she said. "Dad had died when I was 12, long before Caleb entered our lives. I like to think he would have protected us if he'd been alive." "You think?" "I know. He raised you to be strong. That strength is what saved you and Paisley. Paisley saved us. You both saved each other." That night, Vincent and I delayed our honeymoon by 1 day so we could attend Paisley's high school graduation. At 15, she was graduating early with a full scholarship to the state university. Her valedictorian speech was about the power of documentation and the importance of speaking truth to power. 4 years ago, she told the audience, "I was a scared kid who didn't know how to help my family. But I learned that sometimes the smallest person in the room can make the biggest difference. Sometimes courage looks like a 6-year-old with a camera. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places." In the audience, I saw several parents wiping their eyes, teachers nodding in recognition, and in the very back, almost hidden behind a pillar, I spotted Mrs. Henderson, now retired but still following her former students' achievements. After the ceremony, Mrs. Henderson found us in the crowd. "I always knew she'd change the world," she said, hugging Paisley tightly. "You started it," Paisley replied. "You taught me that documentation matters." You taught yourself that courage matters. 5 years later, I was sitting in a courtroom watching my 20-year-old daughter deliver her closing argument in a mock trial competition. She was a junior at law school, top of her class, and already being recruited by victim advocacy organizations. Her case was about domestic violence, because of course it was. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said, her voice clear and confident. "The evidence in this case is overwhelming. We have documentation. We have witnesses. We have a pattern of escalating abuse that culminated in an assault witnessed by 40 people." She paused, making eye contact with each juror. "The defense wants you to believe that this was an isolated incident, a moment of poor judgment. But abuse is never isolated. It's a choice made repeatedly by someone who believes they have the right to control another person through fear." Her argument was flawless. Her delivery was passionate but controlled. Watching her, I thought about that 6-year-old girl with pigtails and a camera, documenting injustice because she didn't know any other way to help. Now she was going to spend her career documenting injustice professionally. After the competition, which her team won, we went out for dinner to celebrate. "I have news," she announced over dessert. "Good news or bad news?" Vincent asked. "Depends on your perspective. I've been offered an internship with the Attorney General's office, Victim Advocacy Division." "That's wonderful," I said. "What's the bad perspective?" "It's in the capital, 4 hours away, for the whole summer." My heart sank a little. Even though she was 20 and fully capable of taking care of herself, I still worried. Would she remember to eat regularly? Would she be safe walking to her car at night? Would she call if she needed help? "You have to take it," I said. "Are you sure?" "Paisley, you've been preparing for this your entire life. This is your chance to help other families like ours." She smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." That summer, Paisley called every Sunday to update us on her work. She was helping to develop new protocols for interviewing child witnesses in domestic violence cases. She was researching the effectiveness of digital evidence in prosecution. She was doing exactly what she was meant to do. "I met a detective today who knew Grandma," she told us during one call. "She said Grandma was legendary for never giving up on a case." "Your grandmother is legendary for a lot of things," I said. She also said that some of the best cops are people who've seen injustice up close, people who have personal stakes in making sure the system works. What do you think about that? "I think our bad experiences don't define us, but they can inform how we help other people." After she graduated law school, Paisley was hired by the district attorney's office in our hometown. Her first case was prosecuting a man who'd been arrested for hitting his girlfriend in front of their 3-year-old son. The similarities to our own story weren't lost on either of us. "How do you feel about it?" I asked the night before her trial. "Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She won the case. The defendant got 2 years in prison and mandatory counseling. The girlfriend got full custody and a restraining order. "One down," Paisley said when she called with the news. "How many more to go?" "However many it takes." On the 10-year anniversary of Caleb's sentencing, Paisley and I visited Mom's grave. She'd died peacefully the year before, surrounded by her family and proud of the women we'd become. "I brought something for Grandma," Paisley said, pulling a newspaper clipping from her purse. It was an article about her latest case, a successful prosecution of a serial domestic abuser who'd terrorized 3 different families over 5 years. "She would have been proud," I said. She was proud. She told me before she died that watching us heal was the greatest victory of her career. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, remembering the woman who taught us both that strength comes in many forms. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't taken those pictures?" Paisley asked as we walked back to the car. "No," I said without hesitation. "Because you did take them. You were brave when you needed to be. We both were." "Yeah, we both were." Last month, Paisley was promoted to senior prosecutor. She specializes in domestic violence cases and has a conviction rate that's the envy of prosecutors across the state. She's also engaged to a public defender named Carlos, who shares her passion for justice and her belief that everyone deserves to feel safe in their own home. "He proposed with a camera," she told me, laughing. "An antique film camera that belonged to his grandmother. He said he wanted to help me document all our happy memories. That's either incredibly romantic or incredibly nerdy. Why can't it be both?" Their wedding is next month. Vincent is walking her down the aisle, and I'm doing a reading from Maya Angelou. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. It seems fitting. We all have stories that need telling. Some are dark, some are hopeful, and some are both. Our story started with violence and fear, but it doesn't end there. It ends with a young woman who turned her childhood trauma into a career protecting other families. It ends with a mother who learned that healing is possible, and love doesn't have to hurt. It ends with 2 people who refuse to let their worst experiences define their future. Today, 15 years after that birthday party that changed everything, I'm sitting in my office at the veterinary clinic where I'm now the managing partner. On my desk is a photo of Paisley accepting an award for her work with child witnesses, and another photo of Vincent and me on our honeymoon. Also on my desk is a letter from a young woman I've never met. She read about Paisley's work in a magazine article and wanted to share her own story. "I was 7 when I started taking pictures of my stepfather hitting my mom," she wrote. "I didn't know what else to do. When I finally showed the pictures to my teacher, she helped us get away. I'm 18 now and starting college with a major in criminal justice. I want to help families like yours and mine. Thank you for showing me that little girls can be heroes too." I've started collecting these letters. They come from children who documented abuse, mothers who found the courage to leave, family members who learned to speak up instead of looking away. Each letter reminds me that our story didn't end with Caleb's sentencing. It rippled outward, touching lives we'll never know about, inspiring courage in places we'll never see. That's the thing about standing up to abuse. It gives other people permission to stand up too. My phone rings, interrupting my thoughts. It's Paisley calling from the courthouse. "Hey Mom, quick question. Do you remember the name of Mrs. Henderson's school?" Roosevelt Elementary. Why? I'm putting together a training program for teachers about recognizing signs of domestic violence. I want to invite her to be one of our keynote speakers. She'd love that. But isn't she retired? Yes, but she still volunteers as a reading tutor. She's been helping kids for 40 years. She deserves recognition for the lives she saved. After we hang up, I sit back in my chair and smile. My daughter is planning to honor the teacher who taught her that documentation matters and trusted adults exist. The circle is complete. Or maybe it's just beginning. Because somewhere out there's probably a scared child who needs to know that help exists, that someone will believe them, that courage can come in the smallest packages. And when that child is ready to speak up, people like Paisley will be waiting to listen. People like Mrs. Henderson will be ready to act. People like my mother will be prepared to protect. The cycle of abuse ends when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things. Sometimes that means a 6-year-old with a camera. Sometimes it means a teacher who pays attention. Sometimes it means a grandmother who never stops fighting for her family. And sometimes it means a mother who finally realizes that her daughter's safety is more important than keeping the peace. Today marks 15 years since I stood in that backyard and let my 6-year-old daughter save us both. Tomorrow, I'll wake up in a house where love feels safe, next to a man who would never raise his hand to me, knowing my daughter is out there making sure other families can feel safe too. That's not a bad ending for a story that started with violence. Actually, that's not an ending at all. That's a beginning.